And then there's the qualitative, there's the doing, and then there's the qualitative doing. So that with degrees of intensity. I gave the example in this class this morning. We'll cover it. I'll read the verse in purport for 80 or 66. But gave the example of, I can't remember exactly the context of the story, but a Prabhupada story of a minister was approached by the king, and the king asked the minister such and such. And the minister said, "I'll tell you tomorrow. Come for your meal." So he came for his meal the next morning, and he saw his minister sitting there in a nice yoga posture, just sitting there. And he asked the minister, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm preparing your breakfast." And he looked at what he was doing, and there was a pot 6 feet up in the air with a flame 6 feet below. "What are you doing?" "I'm cooking your rice." So the king was intelligent, so he could understand there was a little message. You can do something that takes some time. Heat rises, flame down here, pot 6 feet in the air. Eventually it's going to cook. How long? It'll cook more quickly if you bring the pot closer to the flame. So there's this qualitative way by which one can practice sadhana bhakti that can bring one to the upper realms of sadhana bhakti, ruchi and asakti, and then further. Because this next verse, Sarvadharmam parijajya mamikam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashami masuchaha. It has the same verse as the same term as used earlier. That sharanam was the was the Sanskrit word used earlier, and taking full shelter of Krishna, sharanam again, mamekam sharanam braja. Abandon all varieties of dharma and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. The Bhaktivedanta purport reads, the Lord has described in various kinds of knowledge and processes of religion, knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, knowledge of the Super Soul, knowledge of the different types of orders and statuses of social life, knowledge of the renounced order of life, knowledge of non-attachment, sense and mind control, meditation, etc. He has described in so many ways, different types of religion, dharma. Now, in summarizing Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that Arjuna should give up all the processes that have been explained to him. Why explain them to him? The goal is to give them up. Well, some people don't want to just surrender to Krishna. Give me something else to do, please. So here's the something else to do. That it's elevating, in principle it's elevating, but it's not the essence. So then here comes the essence. The essence is those other things can be left behind. The other things can be left behind, and you make one thing your focus. Now literally you can abandon, just like trash, just leave it, or you spiritualize it. To do things that are beneficial because they're beneficial. And then there's direct. Just a little sharing because I can't help it. I gave an extended seminar last weekend, I think it was last weekend, in Houston, Texas, on Madhurya Kandambani, and there's a description of achieving, going from unsteady through anartha vritti to steady, or nishtha, stage of bhakti. And there's a nice description, one of many nice descriptions in that book, of two different types of steadiness. One type of steadiness is steadiness in the activities of bhakti itself. Sakshad bhakti, nishtha. Steadiness in the activities of bhakti itself, primarily hearing and chanting. Steadiness in the primary activities of bhakti. Sakshad bhakti, nishtha. And then there's another kind of nishtha. And the other kind of nishtha is steadiness in manifesting, pursuing with the intelligence and manifesting by behavior those characteristics that enhance, that help bhakti become full. And then there's lists of things, mode of goodness things primarily. We had a really nice discussion about it because other processes have the same thing. Because other processes, even if you're a Buddhist, where it's no bhakti, but there's emphasis on mode of goodness activities. Yes? Yes. Two main things in Buddhism. Two main things. In order to become free from suffering, so we'll go back. The root cause of suffering is desire. To become free from suffering, become free from desire. To become free from desire, two things. One, frame your life in the quality of goodness, starting with ahimsa and other nice things. Compassion, cleanliness, truthfulness, simplicity, mode of goodness. Frame your life in the quality of goodness. The incubation chamber for being a good Buddhist. Mode of goodness, activities. And then the second thing is mindfulness. Meditation, mentioned here. People, meditation has become, it's in your parking lot. Meditation van. Meditation is popular. Meditation on what? Different varieties of meditation on what? But so meditation. But in Buddhism, little lesson in Buddhism, compliments of Jiva Goswami. Mindfulness, according to the teachings, according to the Sanskrit teachings of Buddha, is the only. He doesn't deny the existence of the soul. He doesn't say that there is. He doesn't say that there isn't. He simply says, he writes, there's consciousness, which we know as a symptom of the soul. Consciousness is momentary. The Sanskrit is, in his writings, kshanik vijnanavad. Vada, the doctrine of kshanik vijnana. In his language, vijnana means consciousness, and kshanik means a blink of an eye. Like, and that's consciousness. It's moment to moment to moment. So the practice of meditation for Buddhists is be in the moment. mindfulness. Our practice is also mindfulness. Our practice is also mode of goodness. That's the second kind of steadiness in bhakti. You become steady in the characteristics of those features of life that help. They don't create bhakti, but they assist one to come to the stage of bhakti. And there's two types of nishtha. So back to the Buddhists, just complete that little package. Be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment. Because the past is gone, the future hasn't happened. Be in the moment. And when you become really good at being in the moment, what's next? You go beyond the moment. And what's beyond the moment? Nirvana. What's nirvana? Nothingness. Cessation of material existence. If you want to become free from suffering, stop your material existence. How do you do that? Stop desire. How do you do that? Mindfulness. And become really good at mindfulness, and you're beyond the moment. You're in the space of voidism. Now, there's no such thing. Srila Prabhupada's teaching is there are two things. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing. In all the creation of God, there's not a third thing. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing. There's no void in the creation of God. I mean, it keeps it really simple. I like how he keeps things really simple. There's no void in the creation of God. There's no such thing. You can anesthetize a patient, give them some anesthesia, cut them up and do this and that and the other thing, and when the anesthesia wears off, the consciousness that's just anesthetized becomes manifest again. Similarly, the anesthetized state of consciousness that's entering into something that doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. After some time, it'll manifest again. But for the time being, you're numb. No suffering. There's no feeling. There's nothing. Ness. But it's not totally unnatural. Because living entities, by nature, part and parcel of the Supreme, they have the propensity to desire. As the Supreme has unlimited iccha, living entities also have iccha, desire. So the problem is not desire. That's not the cause of suffering. The problem is ignorance. Because ignorance covering the living entity causes ignorant desire. And ignorant desire causes ignorant activity, causes suffering. So the problem is not desire, the problem is ignorance, or the darker coverings of the soul. So how to get rid of those darker coverings of the soul? Bhagavad Gita, by bhakti, and then bhakti that is, now we're going back to the topic I got distracted with. There's the qualitative surrender. Qualitative. Surrender 5%. And then you go up. And then, so this is speaking of complete. Ananya bhakti. Ananya, nothing else but. That's chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita. Maicha ananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. Avyabhichari bhakti, undivided devotion. Nothing but devotion. Nothing but devotion. Unto whom? Unto Krishna. Mam. Shayo vyabhicharina bhakti yogena sevate. Devotion unto Krishna. So that's this one also. Mam ekam. Nothing else but. And for those of us that are not pure devotees yet, there may be some pure devotees here in the room, but for those of us that are not, it's less than 100%, or it's a mix. And so this sarvadharmam parityaja, the word parityaja is abandon, and then there's commentary that speaks, what does that mean? And then again, it's degrees. Degrees of surrender, degrees of letting go. Which means the goal, if the goal is to become fully surrendered or go down a little bit, say, attached to Krishna. We're attached. We can strive to be attached to Krishna through sadhana bhakti. The obstacle is we're attached to other stuff besides attached to Krishna. That's the mix. How to get to unmixed? Just keep doing nice sadhana, yes, and then a qualitative how you do sadhana, or the purposefulness, or using this again, this Buddhist phrase, the mindfulness, the focus. You know, it's like you all like kirtan, so that's something you can all relate to. And there's degrees of kirtan. There's nice melodious, and there's melodious where it's absorbing, and then there's something where there's another experience besides the melodious kirtan that's absorbing. And we practice to get purposefully to get to the stage where it's just the holy name. I'm going to tell a little story. I was some few years ago, like 50 plus years ago, I was a college kid. And when I was a college kid, there were choices of spirituality that were popular, reasonably popular. And one of those chanting of Hare Krishna popular persons was the author, the Harvard professor Richard Alpert, who was, he had left Harvard University and went to India. He met a guru and became initiated in the chanting of Hare Krishna, but he was an impersonalist. And he came back to America, Baba Ram Das, and was chanting Hare Krishna in the college circuit. So, I attended some of his programs, and he was chanting Hare Krishna. So I was attracted, because he's chanting Hare Krishna. And he kept saying this phrase, be one with the chant. Be one with the chant. I thought, that's cool. What does that mean? Be one with the chant. But he kept saying it. Then finally he said, in the beginning stages, there's you in the chant. And in the mature stage, it's just the chant. And I understood what he was saying, and I said, forget this guy. What he's saying is, I become Krishna. Poor Krishna. So our idea is not become one with the chant in the sense of losing the self. The self becomes zip, and you become the supreme. Not like that. That's the wrong idea. But there's a nice teaching. Dhyana Chandra Goswami, who is a disciple of Gopal Guru Goswami, who is a disciple of Akreshwara Pandit, who is a follower of Lord Chaitanya, this like disciplic succession personality in Puri. He wrote a little padati on how to chant with absorption. And one of the messages is one should chant in such a way that the mind is absorbed in the mantra is absorbed in the mind. But it's not like you become the mantra, or you become Krishna, or you lose the self, and you become the Supreme. But speaking of the mind, the recommendation is with absorption, with that kind of intensity. And when there's that kind of intensity, that's what real absorption is. So not mixed attachment, but very focused attachment. Mamekam sharanam. Mamekam sharanam. Qualitative. And if you're not there yet, what do? You practice it. You cultivate it. By good association, by sadhu sangha, and bhajana kriya, the activities with purposefulness, with an aspiration, the purpose of making that connection with Krishna everything for you. Now, making the connection with Krishna everything doesn't mean trashing other stuff. You need different musicians for nice kirtan. We don't trash each other. But the other becomes a part of something that's much bigger than any one of us or all of us together. It's the Supreme. And collectively, we're using our voice and using our abilities and using our whatever we have for the pleasure of Krishna. So this is Sarvadharmam verse. Mamekam sharanam braja. Then the other half, aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I mean, it's a given. When the light is on, the darkness is dispelled. When the light is bright, there's no darkness at all. When that full surrender to Krishna is there, there's no question about sinful reaction. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Now, it's specific to Arjuna because Arjuna is having to do something he doesn't want to do. That's the verses that I skipped over. Krishna is reminding Arjuna that you didn't want to do this, but I'm asking you to do this. And if you don't do this, I'll go back and read it, but if you don't do this, you're by nature, your psychophysical nature is you're a warrior. You're going to be engaged in battle. You're going to be engaged in protecting people. You're going to be engaged in using your powers. That's what you're trained. That's what you're meant for. You don't do it for me. You're going to do it some other way. So use your psychophysical nature in service to Krishna with complete focus. That's the advocacy of this verse. And aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yashami. And then there's nice commentary on what kind of moksha is he speaking about. But he already has identified moksha is to be with Krishna with absorption and loving service. Whatever one's constitutional position may be, you do that constitutional position activity and mindfulness with Krishna. Like this newly married lady and her mother-in-law. She couldn't do anything. Her mind was completely with Krishna, whatever she was doing. Now, it doesn't mean you have to, a sign that you've become an advanced devotee is you become spaced out. Or, you don't know what you're doing. That's not a sign of an advanced devotee. But she didn't have any prior training. So, we need some nice training so we can do things in an orderly fashion and continue with our duties of life, our activities, and gradually by the sadhana practice and qualitative sadhana in good association, go further and further and further and further and further and further. Until there's just exclusive attachment. Just a little bit, and I'll end. The description that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives of the stage of Ruchi and Asakti is pretty astounding. A distinction he makes is, in Ruchi, there's a taste for the activity of hearing and chanting. And it's spontaneous. It doesn't take the intelligence guiding the mind go there. The mind goes there because there's taste. It's a spontaneous platform. And then in the Asakti, it's a more mature stage of Ruchi. That is to say, there's attachment not just for hearing and chanting, but the object of hearing and chanting. There's bhajan and there's bhajaniya. There's the activity of hearing and chanting, and there's the object of the activity of hearing and chanting. And one is simply attached. And one doesn't have to try anything because it's on a spiritual platform. It's still, the distinction is, there are still traces of anarthas within, and there are lists of what those traces are, but they're almost completely gone. Almost completely gone. And then the bhava stages when they're completely gone. Because that intensity, again, it's a question of intensity versus laxity, but the same activity doesn't change, but the intensity goes up and up and up and up and up. And the external character of such a person, worldly people can't understand what's going on. Like the mother-in-law didn't understand what's going on with her daughter-in-law. She was bit by this black serpent. Krishna. There's some very nice examples. I'll give one very nice example of the platform of Krishna consciousness that our founder Charya was on. The history, the date was something like mid-March 1972, something like that. We're in Mayapur. And hundreds of devotees in the temple room. You know, March, the temperature was nice. It's very nice, and your physical atmosphere. And Prabhupada was giving a morning Bhagavatam class, just the same thing that he would do every morning. And one particular morning, he, in the middle of speaking, I could say, Rasamrita, she's here? Yeah. Just send me a note, and I'll send you the lecture that Prabhupada, the transcription of the lecture that Prabhupada gave, because I can't remember exactly at this moment. So you get the context, and you're just giving a regular Bhagavatam class. And at a certain point in time, he was describing, the characteristic of a devotee is that of being humble. And then he stopped. He paused. That's regular kind of conversational thing that he would do. And he went into trance right in front of us. His eyes closed. The facial muscles of his face started to sag. His body started to sway back and forth like a tree in the wind. He went into a trance right in front of us. We didn't know what to do. It lasted for about 2 minutes plus. Finally, right or wrong, Hansaduta stood up, held the mridanga. He was like a nice kirtanier, and he played mridanga very softly and chanted very softly Hare Krishna mantra. And after a few refrains of the Hare Krishna mantra, Prabhupada, his body became normal again. His facial features became normal again. He looked around the room. He got up off the Vyasasana and went upstairs, and that was the end of class. So although he was with us prior to that trance, he wasn't really with us. He was with Krishna. I mean, that's how I take it. And some trigger, some spurti it's called, Krishna appeared. And when Krishna appeared, something like what happened with Grandfather Bhishma, the departure of Grandfather Bhishma, he lost external consciousness. His consciousness was withdrawn from the ordinary things that we do with our senses and our mind. And it was fully with Krishna only. Mamekam Sharanam. And the kirtan brought him back to be with us. And that was it. There's other examples. Not too many, but a number of examples where Prabhupada demonstrated, or through his being in a public situation, it's described in Madhurya Kandambati that an elevated devotee likes to hide. They hide their symptoms. They conceal their symptoms. And so that they can engage in service and not have accolades go in their direction because they start rolling on the ground or crying or something. So people will go, oh, he's an elevated Vaishnava. Elevated Vaishnavas conceal that. And sometimes Prabhupada couldn't conceal it by Krishna's arrangement. So that's his Mamekam Sharanam verse. So it's qualitative, and we're working towards that gradually. We should be, we should be working towards that gradually through the practices, through sadhana, to get to the, using Prabhupada's words, the perfectional stage. You use it consistently. Perfectional stage. So one can become like Arjuna in the perfectional stage. Just follow Arjuna. In the teaching that Krishna gave to Arjuna, follow the teaching that Krishna gave Arjuna. Because the teaching to Arjuna was to teach us. He put Arjuna in this bewildered situation because that's us. So Arjuna could ask nice questions and Krishna could give nice answers to instruct us. Okay, 1866 Bhagavad Gita plus a few other things. Let's see if there's some discussion. Nice to see so many devotees here. Hand the microphone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class. My question is a little earlier in chapter 18, like you were mentioning that Arjuna, he's basically, Krishna is saying, like, even if you don't want to do it, you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's your duty, it's your nature. So you'll fight anyways. And there's one purport, I can't remember which text it is, but Prabhupada, when he's describing it, he's saying that even if you're a Shudra and you have a bad master, still it's your duty to serve that master, and that's the right thing. And so I'm just wondering, when it comes to surrender, and maybe we're going about our daily, work or family or whatever normal things we're doing, how can we make sure that we have this like mood of surrender instead of that, well, I'm trying to fulfill my material desire?
So, in my language, there's a trajectory of bhakti life, or in the language of Rupa Goswami, there's stages of bhakti. So, how can we go from this stage to that stage, to that stage, to that stage, to that stage? How can we go to the stage where there's squeaky clean? Where there's not other shelters but one shelter. It's progressive. So spiritual trajectory or stages of bhakti are by following the formula, the sadhana bhakti formula. It's not a secret what the sadhana bhakti formula is. Those principles that through which or under which bhakti begins, in the more mature stage, they do become more mature. And then you follow those principles, same principles, and with greater care and attention and intensity. Intensity is a nice word. Intensity doesn't mean, you grit your teeth and you growl and things like that. It means with a degree of focus, a purposefulness. So if you have that sense of purposefulness that's there in the seed that's not yet mature, then you circle back in the course of the trajectory of spiritual consciousness or the stages of bhakti, and you hit the pause button, you take a look at where am I? And why am I doing, a big question, why am I doing this? Because why we were doing this in day one may not be why we're doing this in year 10 or year 20 or, Ideally, if you don't revisit it, it can become business as usual or complacency. So it's good. Being uncomfortable is good sometimes because then you get like a kick in the seat of the pants. You have to, what's going on here? Why am I? So revisit the principles that are at the seed stage of bhakti, and in a more mature stage, you revisit those same principles, and then with a again focused, go forward. So you can assure that you'll reach the goal. Krishna promises, the one who strives by right means is guaranteed of success. And how long depends on, the intensity, how high the pot is above the flame. How serious are you? How sincere and serious are you to let this human form of life be used to its full advantage, as opposed to, I'm comfortable, thus complacent, thus slackening. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's term, slackening and submission. So don't let your submission slacken, let it grow. So that's this sharanagati or sharanam phrase. So how can we assure? By following the bhakti process properly, the sadhana bhakti process properly. And then you revisit from time to time, you go revisit. How am I doing? And it's good to have wholesome persons who you can open yourself up to and say, tell me what you see. Do you see things that I don't see? Thank you for asking. Yes, I see a few things that I think you don't see. Oh. That's a good friend. But you don't open, you do this with persons that know you, and they know how to be a good friend. They know how to encourage but not flatter and help you to grow. So be with friends and sadhu sangha. That's how bhakti begins. You just do it, in gradations, and revisit it and keep practicing sadhana carefully. Yes.
Why am I doing this?
Mm.
Because the reason on day one may not be the same as you said, year
Yes.
10.
Yes.
and it's good to be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering, what if, so then is it recommended for one to also question a relationship or say their vows that they made to a spiritual master? And it just seems kind of like maybe not such a healthy thing to do, perhaps, or wander into that kind of realm. So I was just trying to process that.
The asking, the inquisitiveness is fundamental. The why question is a type of inquisitiveness, and it can get into a defiant kind of why, and it can, help me not be complacent. So, for the purpose of take up that activity of the why questioning, for the purpose of refocus. If your purpose is right, it's wholesome, and if your purpose isn't right, it can get unwholesome. That's my a very simple way of responding. And circumstances of life give us tests, even if you don't ask the question. Circumstances of life, why is this happening? Is there a lesson for me? Something, those kinds of, not doubtful, but introspective kinds of questions. And if you or any one of us move our lives in that direction, it's quite comfortable. I mean, it's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable, but it's beneficial, so therefore I'm feeling comfortable being uncomfortable. You've probably seen my presentations enough that you know this little visual where there's people on the upper left, and I want to go there, but I'm not there, so I'm uncomfortable because I'm not there. And getting there is like new territory. So I'm uncomfortable, but it's good to be uncomfortable when the purpose is getting to where I want to go. So the asking the why question, back to your question, it doesn't have to be a doubtful kind of why. It's introspective kind of why. So you can ultimately connect with Krishna better. More purposefully, more mindfully, more deliberately, with clarity of intention. And then, reset and off you go. A more mature you pursuing the more mature picture of what the goal is.
Sometimes when people perhaps when they first come to take up Krishna consciousness, we define it as like they may be fanatic. There may be some fanaticism. And I was just thinking, I mean, it's something I was thinking about a few days ago, and I was wondering, it sounds like fanaticism sort of may sound like, oh, it's Krishna and we just trash everything else. But I was wondering if there is some benefit to being a little fanatic, at least in the beginning, or is it something completely unhealthy and it would be better?
It's a stage. It's just to respond. In Madhuri Kandambini, there's a Sanskrit phrase, utsaha mayi. Fanaticism. Utsaha mayi, false. It's not real. It looks like, but it's not. I've heard Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj give a seminar in Madhuri Kandambini like 8 times. I like his way of speaking. And his example of Utsaha Mayi is a really nice one, so I'll repeat it. one time George Harrison came to visit the Bhaktivedanta Manor, proper that he donated, and he came to visit it. And when he came, it was, in London, so it rains, so there are puddles everywhere. He came up in a big limousine, and one nice, enthusiastic, fanatic young devotee saw him coming, and he came running, and he threw himself before George Harrison in a big puddle. And then he stood up, and his dhoti is dripping with mud, and George said, "You didn't have to do that." Utsahamai. There's nothing wrong. Nice. But, it's a little... There are more mature ways to exhibit enthusiasm. And an immature way to exhibit enthusiasm that can be perceived of, at least perceived of, as fanaticism. So being enthusiastic to let go and to take shelter of, that's good. And it's par for the course. It's just standard. So in the beginning, because the frame of your question was, is there a place for it? Yes. It's not only the place for it, it's standard.
And so naturally, if those who may be practicing a little longer observe that fanaticism or enthusiasm,
Yeah.
it shouldn't just be shut down. It can be...
You smile. In Houston, I was there for a while giving this seminar. There was this young devotee. He's not just a new devotee, but before this, there's a lot of people that come to the Houston Temple at the Sunday program. And he was lying on the ground. There's the Govinda's restaurant. Just past the Govinda's restaurant, there's a little walkway. And he was lying with his hands outstretched and his bead bag in the end of his hand, and just like an avaduta, just lying there, chanting, and all the people going to the Sunday feast looking, what's this guy? It's a kind of fanaticism. There's a way to be humble without being ostentatious about it. I don't know the person. But so there's a kind of fanaticism, even not just new people, that not mature. But it's okay. It's okay. He found some connection with Krishna in lying there on the side of the sidewalk, next to the flower bed. Okay.
Thank you, Brother.
Something else. Okay, yes, way in the back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Am I audible?
Yeah, very audible.
Thank you. So, this is from Prem Pallavi. She's not here today, and she sent me the message. There are 9 processes of bhakti, and kirtan we can do for the pleasure of the Lord, and others more seem like we can do for the Lord. But Shravanam, how can we make it I'm doing for Krishna? Like it's more for me. I want to know more about, or I want to
Good question.
learn more about how I can how she's questioning, like how do we dovetail it's for Krishna.
You're reciting a question of somebody else, yes?
Yeah, that's my wife. Prem Pallavi sent me a message. She couldn't be here today, so she wanted to ask.
Okay.
And I'm relaying the message. Thank you.
Well, it's easy to be selfish when hearing, and it's not so difficult to be in the mood of service. That is, what I receive, let me give. I met somebody a little while ago, and they've been around for umpteen years, and now they want to, what's next? So I said, I don't know you, so I can't say what's next. But if I knew you, I might be able to say something more definitive, but here's a general. Receive and give. That's what's next. You know, it's you do what you're doing and find ways that you can receive. That's the hearing, shravanam. And then comes kirtanam. That which you receive, you give to others. And it doesn't have to be, a big splash, a kaboom. It doesn't have to be just, in principle. It can be, it can be any one of those things and in between. But principle-wise, I'm receiving something, let me give that something. For me personally, it's how bhakti starts. Started. I received, and then I felt something. I felt gratitude. And then I wanted to assist that person who gave me what he gave me. He risked his life to cross the ocean and find this little guy out there in Timbuktu that he didn't know who, I didn't. And he gave me that which changed my life. I want to give back. So that's how you can take the hearing and have it service-oriented. You somehow or another, you give to others. It can be simple, for anybody. Book distribution. Just today I received a text message from somebody in China. To do book distribution in China, besides people, there's the government. Besides the government, there's, people. Anyway. But she's doing it anyways. And it was like celebrating, like 12 books in the... But it's just so it's little. That's how you can take the hearing, and that will inspire her. She is feeling inspired to read more carefully that which she's giving. It doesn't have to be like that, but it can be like that. Okay. Anything else? Yes, back by the door.
Krishna Maharaj. We sometimes sing bhajans from Sharanagati, from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Sharanagati, the bhajan song book from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he mentions how family life, he has wasted all his life in family, taking care of kids and working.
I saw you, little baby.
Krishna's grace, I have devoted wife.
Yeah, you had a wife too.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm teasing you.
Yeah. It's first, sometimes there's lack of energy to surrender.
Lack of?
Energy to surrender at the end of the day, feel inspired to even hear sometimes because you're tired from the day at work and all that stuff. So I feel like there's no ruchi, because ruchi means to hear and chant,
I'm holding my breath. You have to breathe. So I'm using this as a metaphor, but it's like breathing. Not engaging in bhakti is like death. Stop breathing. It's air. You need air. You need to engage yourself in bhakti. And the bhakti principle is shravanam kirtanam. So you must. Just like breathing. It's not optional. Some things might be optional, but that's not optional. It's life, and without life is death. If I've understood your question correctly, it's just when it's in, this is this why question. This is the why question. You know, what's it all about? What's life? Anyway, is it, you know, going back to the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Sharanagati songs, if I simply engage in the material aspect of life, it's a wasting of this valuable human form of life. So what's the human form of life meant for if it's not those things? Do those things, that's okay. Stanes to takshutigatam tanavan manobir. Stay in your position and do stuff. And hear and chant and vibrate, broadcast the hearing and chanting message to your capacity. You know, each of us have our nature. We're going to do the same in a different way, in a different way, in a different way, because we have different natures, and that's nice. It's natural and it's nice. But breathe. Don't hold your breath. You'll die.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. He's ready to turn over the microphone. Somebody else, and otherwise we're going to end. Okay, we're going to end. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.